morning we welcome back Mooney, formerly from the Wayzata campus, and now he is in Maplewood, the new one.
Hey, thank you. Hey, it's a privilege to be here. Dick said I had a chance to talk a little bit about the Maplewood campus because some people might just be curious about how it's going. Man, it's been really exciting. I was there week one when it opened. It was so fun to see all the preparation that went into it. The week of, we still have contractors in the building. There's still paint going up on the walls. It was madness. But the coolest part was knowing what the church looked like prior to. And I want to say there was a group of really faithful individuals who were there. And they compiled what was Life Point Church. And all of them together were so excited about just the opportunity for Eaglebrook to come in. But prior to, I think they had just under 100, maybe between 70 and 90 people in attendance on a Sunday. And what was so exciting is now we are averaging close to 900 every Sunday. So, and it's so exciting because yes, the opening weekend was really big, but it's sustained. And now we have 3 services on Saturday, so 1 on Saturday and then 2 on Sunday, so 3 services total. But it's just so exciting to see the life. And when I talk to people who are from the Life Point Church and ask them, hey, what do you think about it now? You saw what it was like, now you see what it is. What do you think? And they were like, man, this is everything that we wish we could have done. And that's the part that's so cool, is to see that we are journeying with them and have the same heart just to reach other people for Christ. Well, I am thrilled to be with you this morning. I am from the Maplewood campus. I do the pastor of campus operation roles, which mean I do everything behind the scenes that no one really knows about. I don't even know if my boss knows what I do, right? It's so fun because nobody really knows what I do until there's a problem. And they're like, who helps us with this? And that's normally me. But hey, it was, I don't know, about this time a year ago that I was here, and I have some exciting personal news to share with you. You see, my wife and I, Jenny, are expecting our firstborn. Yeah, so very exciting. Thank you. So we're expecting a boy. We are due in April, and we're really, really thrilled about it. It's the first boy in both sides of our family. But what I've been doing is going around, and a lot of my friends, they already have kids, so I've been asking them, hey, what's your parenting advice? What advice do you have for me? And they all say the exact same thing. Sleep while you can. Right? They're always saying, man, just honestly, sleep as much as you can because your life is about to be ruined. No. But they're saying, hey, you're not going to have free time. You're going to be running around. Whatever schedule you think you were going to have, whatever goals you set, just erase the board, clean slate. It's going to be crazy, so just get ready. And it's so fun, but I also ask them, you know, with the bags in their eyes from the sleepless nights they've had, and I'm like, man, what is it that like you're really looking forward to? And they all say one word: retirement. They all say, man, we cannot wait till we get to the day where, as much as we love our kids, they're all grown up, they're out of the house, and we have all this free time back, and eventually we can, have financial freedom and be done with our jobs and just enjoy life. And it's so fun because I'm thinking about what they're saying, and they're saying, man, we can't wait till we get to this stage in life where we're finally going to have all these things. And I have, some in-laws, and they retired about 3 years ago. And oftentimes I'll go, and my mother-in-law, her name is Linda, and I'll be like, Linda, what do you got going on this next week? Oh, no, you wouldn't believe it, but Jan and Sue, they're coming over. We're going to have coffee on this day, and then we have another Bible study on this day, and then me and Dan, well, we're going to go on a date night. We're going to go over here, and then, don't forget pickleball on Wednesdays. We have a lot this week. And I swear, when she starts looking at her schedule and I look at mine, I'm like, man, you're busier than I am. This is incredible. And it's so fun because I started thinking about my in-laws' life stage, and I started thinking about many of you here today, and a lot of you are already there, right? You have what so many people in life really, really long for. They have this goal of one day, despite all of this tiredness that we're experiencing now, one day, we're going to be able to have a cleared schedule. One day we're going to be able to just do whatever we want, and it's going to be great. But I think the beautiful thing about being in the life stage that you are is that you realize that even though you're here, you still feel restless, right? Even though there's this freedom that comes, this idea that, man, all will be well and I'll finally be able to rest then, you find, man, I am filling up my schedule still. And there are so many things for me still to do. And believe it or not, I'm still tired. Right, this hope that I had of this big dream of this being the landing spot, well, it turns out that, man, it can be just as empty as I was before. And it's interesting because I see people wrestling with this. We all have this idea that, man, I just want to be able to rest, relax, and experience maybe peace. And we know that rest is more than just simply sleeping, but it's this ability to feel a rest in our life that, man, I'm okay. I'm okay with where I am, I'm okay with where I've been, and I'm okay with where I'm going. But so many of us carry this restlessness in us that we never really come to that point of being able to experience it. It's funny because I've observed Americans, and I've deemed a term, it's called the Restless American Syndrome. And what it means is I've been observing Americans, what I find is when we want to rest, or experience that comfort that goes beyond just sleeping, what we do is we typically, instead of emptying the schedule, we actually fill it. We find things to do. One of my favorites is just simply that cup of coffee. Right? I just want to get away from everything, and I can just sit here for maybe 5-10 minutes and just enjoy this coffee. Whether it be in the morning, the afternoon, whatever it is. But I find that's with a lot of things. We add it to our schedule in hopes of actually getting away from something. We get away from that restlessness that we actually have in our soul, and we just want to detach from that and connect with whatever this might be. Whether that's a cup of coffee, or, hey, I want to go watch a movie, detach from the world and just be involved in this, or watch sports on Sunday, watch a Vikings game maybe, or, hey, I just want to go for a walk, or, hey, I just want to lay by the beach, or, hey, I just want to go spend some time with friends. But it's always another thing that we add to the list, and most of them involve the idea of detaching from what it is that really is eating at us and attaching to something else and just being away from it for a moment. And with this restless American syndrome, it's interesting because I started doing research as to well, how rested are Americans actually? And there was a Gallup study done that said 2/3 of people still struggle with getting sleep at night. 2/3 of people still struggle with getting sleep at night. And there was another one that said, from the American Psychological Association, that said, of those people that are struggling to get sleep, 70% of them said it was related to stress. They have time to sleep, but there's this restlessness in them that won't let them sleep at night. What's really scary is the CDC reports that sleepless nights are associated with an increased risk of developing chronic conditions such as obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, and frequent mental distress. Whew, it's pretty scary. But you see, we have this problem where we're always trying to rest, yet never feeling rested. And I started thinking about it more and more, and amazingly, we have this Bible, this Word of God, and it turns out that this restless American syndrome, well, it's not really an American problem, it's a people problem. It's a restless human problem. And I start looking through, and it's not just American society or a German society or a Japanese society. Guess what? It's a human problem because it goes back in time. I started reading this passage that I want to share with you. It's from Isaiah. It was written right around 2,700 years ago, or 700 years before Christ came. And in it, God has some interesting news for the Israelites. So I'm going to read it with you. I'm going to start in verse 2. So this is Isaiah 55. And we'll eventually tackle verses 1 through 3, but this is verse 2. It says, why, this is God talking to the Israelites, why spend your money on food that does not give you strength? Why pay for food that does no good? Listen to me, and you will eat what is good. You will enjoy the finest food. It It's amazing because you have this God and he looks down at these Israelites, who he loves, who he's cared for. He says, you are my nation, but he's looking at them and their wheels are going and going and going. And he says, listen, you're expelling all your energy, looking for rest, and you're not finding it. When are you going to wake up to the reality check that what you're doing is not working? It's amazing because he's kind of extending an olive branch and just saying, wake up. It's time for a reality check. Smell the roses. Maybe to get an idea of what God is trying to get at them. I can share this story. My wife and I, a couple of years ago, well, about 3 or 4 now, we got into kayaking. Any kayakers out here? Yeah, okay, a couple. So we love kayaking, but at the time that we started getting into it, well, we were living in an apartment. We were newly married, and we're looking at it and we're going, well, these kayaks are huge. Where are we going to store them? We have to put something on the car. They're heavy. How do we solve this if we want to go kayaking? And it turns out that nowadays you can get inflatable kayaks. They're super cool, right? So what's amazing is you can deflate them. They fold up into this nice little bag. You can put it in the back of your trunk of your car. Nobody even knows that you have it. You get there and within 10 minutes of pumping it up, you're on the water, good to go. There's just one problem with inflatable kayaks. Yes, they can leak. So what I want you to do is imagine yourself sitting on the side of a lake and you're just looking out. And you see my wife and I come along and, you know, my wife and I were there. We start getting the kayaks together and we hear this little hissing noise. But now I hear the hissing noise and I tell my wife, well, it can't be that bad. In fact, I have just the idea. We use these little pumps to pump them up, and I'm like, what if I put the pump in the back of the kayak, and anytime it gets a little lower, I'll just fill it up again. And so sure enough, we set out on the lake, and we are kayaking, and this is a true story. And you start watching us kayak along, and my wife and I are looking like this, and suddenly my kayak starts folding in on me. And imagine that you're just sitting on the lake shore and you're just watching this happen. And, you know, there's this guy you don't know and suddenly he turns around and you see him and he's just... And he's pumping back up this kayak. And off they go and about 5 minutes later... Now, imagine that you're watching this transpire, and after about 30 minutes, this couple finally docks their kayaks, they come to the shore, and they walk up to you, and you just ask them, hey, how did it go? And they look at you, this being me, and it's like, man, it was great, so relaxing, I love kayaking. You'd be like, okay. Now, clearly, it wasn't working, right? Clearly, most of us would say, that's not relaxing. And that's what God is doing to the Israelites here. He loves these people, but he's looking at them and he's like, man, I'm watching you. I see you, and what you're doing, it's not working. Come to me. He goes on to say this. This is verses 1 and 3. He says, is anyone thirsty? Come and drink. Even if you have no money, come, take your voice of wine or milk. It's all free. Come to me with your ears wide open, listen, and you will find life. I love this passage because God really is saying something specific. He's saying, I see you. He says, I see how hard you're working, and I see how tired you are. If he could look at you today, he said, hey, I see you. I see that you finally got to this point in life that you were hoping would have all the answers. This point in life that would finally give you rest. But I see what's keeping you up at night. I can see that your relationship with your kids, and some of them, they're not following the Lord. And it keeps you up at night. And you can't forgive yourself. You're filled with this asking, was I enough? Did I meet my kids' expectations? Was I a good parent? Is it my fault? I see when you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed and that knee, and it's still bothering you. That arthritis, you're realizing, isn't going to go away. In fact, it's only going to get worse. And you have questions about what's to come. Hey, I see you. You're in this life stage, and You're checking the bank account. Once a week you're going through and saying, hey, what is my retirement account? How far can we make it? How much have we spent? I'm doing the calculating. How far are we going to make it? Can I be at rest? I see you when the neighbors come over and you guys are having coffee, but you start asking those subtle questions, asking them, oh, what are you doing with your retirement life? Oh, you have that home in Florida. Or you have that cabin up north. Oh. Or this is what you're doing with your free time. I wonder if I can do that with my free time. You're slowly comparing yourself with them. You're not resting. I see you. I see what's keeping you up at night. And he reaches out with this olive branch and he says, if you would just ask, if you would just ask me, I would give you rest. And I'd give it to you for free. All you have to do is ask. What's so fun about this passage is it's written by Isaiah, who was a prophet. And what's amazing about prophets is they are speaking to the people at the time in which they're speaking, but they're also telling of something to come. And what's so fun is Isaiah was speaking words that would come to fruit 700 years later through the life of Jesus. I want to share another passage with you. This one, I'm jumping forward to the New Testament. This is John chapter 4. And I want to read about an interaction that Jesus has with a woman at a well. So I'm starting in verse 5. This is John chapter 4, verses 5, and I'll go through 15. He says, eventually, Jesus came to a Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, please give me a drink. He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with the Samaritans. She said to Jesus, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink? Jesus replied, if you only knew the gift God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. But sir, you don't have a rope or a bucket, she said, and this well is very deep. Where will you get this living water? And besides, do you think you're greater than the ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed? Jesus replied, anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life. Please, sir, the woman said, give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come here to get any water. It's so fun because you can see the comparison I'm making. Right? God in Isaiah is telling his nation, his Israelites, the people he's caring about, if you would just come to me and ask, I would give you. And here's Jesus 700 years later looking at this woman, and he looks at her and says, I see you looking for water. I see how thirsty you are. If you would just ask me, I would give you this living water, and you'd never be thirsty again. And he takes it a step further and says, not only would you never be thirsty again, but it would be bubbling out of you. It would change those around you. Jesus ups the ante even more. Now this woman, she makes a mistake because she starts thinking that Jesus is talking about literal water. That's why she asks, sir, give me this water so I'll never be thirsty again. And I think sometimes we make that same mistake. Friends, we're not talking about the latest smart water that just came out, right? I'm not talking about the perfectly balanced pH water that Mayo Clinic has recommended to us. I'm not talking about a spiritually packed 5-hour energy that if you took it, you would never be tired again. That's not what I'm talking about. Jesus is offering us something so much more. He's offering us something that is going to settle this restlessness inside of us. He has this amazing gift for us, and he says, if you would just ask, I would give it to you. Now, it's hard because understanding what Jesus is offering us. We're so easily mistaken to think that it's physical things. What's so cool about Jesus is he's making the same promise God did back in Isaiah. And why can he do that? Because he himself is God. And what he's offering isn't something material. What he's offering is a restored relationship with him. Him being God has the authority to do that for you. He says, if you would just ask for this relationship with me, I would give it to you. And it's all for free. You just have to ask me. Now, you've heard that before. I'm assuming many of you have. But I think it's so easily lost, and maybe one of the easier ways to understand what it is that he's offering is actually to help compare what he's offering versus that of any other religion in our world today. Now, many of you don't know, but I'm actually a chaplain in the Minnesota Army National Guard. I've been doing it for about 10 years now, and as a chaplain, it doesn't mean that I'm an expert in any religion, but it does mean that I'm responsible to understand the basics of them and how our soldiers might exercise their free practice of religion. And so in doing that, I began to start asking myself, well, what is it that the other religions are offering? And I began to think through, and I actually came across an interaction with a man named Yogi. Now, yes, his name is Yogi, and I first met Yogi at a convention we were having. You see, a bunch of soldiers were just returning from a year-long deployment. And what the Army has done is they had set up a bunch of booths where all of these different people from organizations could come and offer resources to help get these soldiers integrated back with their world. And so all these different resources are there, and I'm in one of the booths as the chaplain. And next to me sits Yogi. Now, Yogi was part of a biker group, and so he has this, black leather vest. He has this dark tan skin. He looks kind of raggedy, a little rough around the edges. He has this long hair that rolls down his back. It's a little intimidating, but I found his demeanor to be rather welcoming and his voice fairly kind. And so as I start talking to Yogi, he comes over to me and he says, Chaplain, I really like you, and you know what I think's going to happen? One day, we're both going to die, but I think we're both going to end up in heaven. And when we get there, you're going to find out that, you've been worshiping your God, and I've been worshiping my God. He was Native American. And he's like, I'm going to be worshiping my God, and we're going to get there and we're going to find out we were worshiping the same God the whole time. And as long as you're a good person, you're going to get there. And what I love about what Yogi said is I thought that he summarized really well what many people in our world think today. Hey, as long as you're a good person and you have good morals, you're going to go to heaven. Basically, all religions are the same. They just teach you to be a good person. I'm sure many of you have heard that before. And when I hear someone say that to me, I often go, you're not wrong, actually. When I think about what it means to be a Buddhist, really it's, hey, how much can I detach from this world and attach myself to what is spiritual? That's being good. If I'm a Hindu, how much can I detach myself from the world and attach myself to what is natural? If I'm a Jew, hey, how much can I do acts of righteousness by obeying the law? If I'm a Muslim, what acts of righteousness can I do to honor Allah? But they all have varying definitions of what is good. And it's so fascinating to me because I begin looking at them and I go, it sounds really familiar. As long as you're a good person, you'll get there. Now, a lot of people, they'll like this idea of I can be a good person. And they'll start down that track until they eventually hit the point of trying to follow it. And they go, am I good enough? Am I actually good enough to get there? Am I righteous enough? And they follow these paths, and eventually they say something else along the lines of, you know what religion is? Religion is just there to control people. It's just man-made, and it's just there to control people. And I often will tell them, you're not wrong either. Because you know what? If I tell you that all you have to do is be good to be going to heaven, and I can tell you what being good is, it looks like this or like that, then yeah, I can control you. And it's kind of scary. Even Jesus had issues with the religious leaders of his time. Listen to what he says. This is from Matthew 23:24. He says, the Pharisees tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on the other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. What is Jesus saying? He's saying the Pharisees are giving you rules that will make you good, and you're buying into that system that you might just be good enough to get there. Jesus hates this. And that's why he speaks out. Now, it's not hard for me to identify a man-made religion. You wonder, how is that? How is it so easy to identify a man-made religion? Well, think about the world that we live in today. We live in a world that is do good, get good. Do bad, get bad. Hey, if I study really hard for a test, guess what? I'm probably going to ace it. If I show up to work early and I'm prepared, guess what? I'm probably going to get promoted one day. If I'm working on a regular basis, hey, I'm probably going to live longer. But guess what? If I'm going to McDonald's and I'm eating Big Macs every day, I'm probably going to have heart disease over time. Hey, guess what? If I don't study and instead I stay up all the way throughout midnight because I procrastinated on the test, I'm probably going to fail. If I show up late to work every single day, I'm probably going to have the same job the rest of my life. Right? It's a do good, do bad, get bad world. And it's not a shocker to me when every other religion follows that pattern. If you do good, you get good. If you do bad, you get bad. It's amazing because when I ask people the question, hey, how do you know you're going to heaven? The number one response, I'm a good person. It's funny because we all like to convince ourselves we're good. One of my favorite quotes is from Tony Soprano, from The Soprano Show. And he says, well, I might kill lots of people, but I'm a good son. We can all find something good in us and say, see, I'm a good person, but we're so quick to ignore the bad. It's really hard to understand what is it that Jesus is offering that is so different from all of these other religions. And perhaps to understand it more fully, I can compare the dying words of Buddha to the dying words of Jesus. You see, Buddha, when he was dying, he said, strive without ceasing. What does he mean? Work at it and keep going, keep pressing on. You gotta earn it. What is Jesus' words as he dies on the cross? It is finished. Yes, there's no greater contrast. You see, unlike all these other religions that the world has, it's a do good, get good, do bad, get bad. Jesus offers something completely foreign, and it comes in the form of grace. It comes in this idea that he took our place, and he's willing to restore this relationship with us, that all we have to do is ask, and he'll give it to us. He's already paid the price. It's not about how bad we've been, nor is it about how good we can be. Rather, it's about how much he loves you, and he's given his life for you. There is nothing else like that. Friends, we still, as Christians, we miss it. We still miss this truth. How do I know that? There was years, for several years, I was a hospital chaplain. As a hospital chaplain, I would be there, and I'd see Christians come into the hospital. And they'd be there, and they'd get a diagnosis that was grim. You know, it might have been cancer of some form, but either way, the doctor gave them a number, and that number was their life expectancy. And facing that number, they wanted to defy all odds. And what did they do? Suddenly, they start praying harder than they've ever prayed before. Suddenly, they start trying to share Jesus with even the nurses in the room or the doctors. Suddenly, they're calling friends and telling them about Jesus. Suddenly, they're trying to read more Bible than they've ever read before. But do you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing them equate their relationship to God based on how good they are. I'm in a pickle now. What do I got to do? I just got to be better. I just got to be more good. And then maybe God will hear me this time. Maybe he'll cure this disease that I have or this cancer, whatever it might be, and he'll hear me this time because guess what? I was better. I was more good. We fall into that same trap of working the same way the world does. Man, if I just do good, I'll get good. And if I do bad, I'll get bad. But that's not what a relationship with Jesus is based on. It's all based not on what we've done for him, but what he's done for us. It's something absolutely beautiful. Friends, that's what grace is. You can't get it anywhere else in this world. I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity. Jesus, in his words in John, I said, he went even further than what Isaiah said. He said, if you ask me, I'll give you this water, and not only will that water give you rest, but it will bubble out of you. It will change those around you. How many of you, does anyone know who General John Vesey is? Anyone heard of that name? So General John Vesey is now passed, but he actually started his career here in Minnesota. He grew up in Lakeville, and eventually he became the most senior officer, being a general, in the entire Army. And he recalls a time that in Vietnam that he interacted with a chaplain he had. And this chaplain was driving up. General John Vesey is what we would call like a forward operating base. And there he is seeing some of the fighting, but his soldiers are there, they're in an encampment, and he sees his chaplain driving a big truck. And he's driving the truck, and he pulls up and he stops. And the chaplain gets out just like he'd expect, all smiley, all happy. And he's like, hey, General, it's great to see you. Hey, I want to see some of your soldiers. Let me go encourage them. Hey, buddy, how's it going? I'm here for you. I'm praying for you. And he has a great smile. He brings this energy. He's uplifting the troops. And General John Vesey, he's thinking to himself, he's like, well, you know what, chaplain? It's easy to do that when you came back from headquarters. It's easy to do that when you're sleeping on a nice bed, when everything's made for you, and life is going just the way that you want it. It's really easy to find rest then. But then something happened. The chaplain finished making his round, and he got in his truck and he started driving away. But as the truck moves forward, suddenly he can see what's in the back of that truck. You see, the chaplain didn't come back from headquarters. He came back from the forward aid station, because in the back of there was bodies. The chaplain had came from the worst part of the battle. He came from watching people die and lose their lives. But despite his circumstances, and no matter where he was, the chaplain brought an energy. Why? Because his circumstances didn't dictate his relationship with God. Rather, it was the love of God for him that dictated it. Here's this beautiful truth about God's love for us. There is nothing that you have done that could change how much God loves you. And there's nothing you can do to make him love you more. He already loves you. Friends, I came thinking about you today. And I thought about this beautiful thing that I've been longing for, and all my friends are, and that's that word, retirement. And we dream about it because we think finally there we'll have rest. I would just hate for you to be in this beautiful life stage and still be restless, to still be suffering from the restless American syndrome. I want you to have freedom in that. I want you to be able to say the rest that I have comes from realizing God sees me and he loves me. And there's nothing I can do to change that relationship. All I have to do is trust him. So I came here today to just share you that good news. Thanks for letting me be here.